learn with me what the hell is going on. Someone needs to get this message to the defense. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Have to use brain power. Let me help out Dr. Russell here.
Many people suffer from what's called an acute grief reaction.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
The investigation was done with honor, integrity, and all the evidence pointed in one direction only.
Buchanan was so defensive and unable to throw Proctor under the bus because he loved him.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Then we add what we know about Michael Proctor. This guy is just the world's biggest. On every level that a person could be, between incompetence and stupidity, Michael Proctor wins the award for a combination of both. They killed him. Who are all the powers that be? Look at the smile on his face. That's what happened. That's what happened. So she doesn't actually want them to get here quickly, and that's the reason why she doesn't say there's an officer down. Meet the Bar Association of Norfolk County's Person of the Year.
I routinely do when I work with attorneys, okay? I prepare this on my own.
Oh my God. See? You see it? It is undeniable.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Holy you guys. Build some way to feed her ego. So if you have absolutely nothing to do with the death of John O'Keefe, why start crying on the stand? Hank Brennan deserves an award for being the most unlikable human being that the world has ever seen. Consciousness of guilt. I would really like somebody to do the right thing in this case.
Sergeant Barrows, is this the condition of the right rear taillight?
Absolutely not.
At no point do you wake up or go outside and say to somebody, why are you here? What if there was a gunman? Because you don't know. How do I know? There's 40 cops in front of my very small front yard. That's the bedroom window. Here's Sonny. Say hi, everybody. Here's my friend. Hello. Sonny barks if you walk by my window and sneeze.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I wasn't going to record a video today, but then I stumbled upon this. Peter met with Adam Lally for lunch. During this lunch, Adam Lally told Peter that he knows the poor person. Oh my God. This is not good.
Now you're starting to see the blurs easier.
You see those two blurs?
Are moving around.
She absolutely knows it would not be Karen Reed's defense team that she'd have to worry about. It would be the defense who she lied to.
Is the defendant not guilty or guilty?
A juror explaining why she voted to acquit Karen Reed of that second-degree murder charge for allegedly ramming her SUV into John O'Keefe during a blizzard in 2022.
A collision did not occur. I can't assess the motive to this sloppy police investigation.
And the toughest moment for her? Hearing the derogatory text messages about Reed sent by lead homicide investigator Michael Proctor just hours after he got the case.
Whatever timestamp was on that deleted wall file is the time that she did that search. And she deleted it. Let's make sure and pin it on this girl who I hope kills herself. That's a class act. You are a class act, Michael Proctor. Definitely someone should give you a gun and a badge. 100% sure that Karen did not do this.
Number one is I could not be standing here without these amazing supporters who have supported me and my team financially and, more importantly, emotionally for almost 4 years. And the second thing I want to say is no one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than I have.
How dare they?
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I am your host, Samantha Beningo. I am a behavioral scientist, a career psychotherapist, a sixth-year PhD candidate in clinical psychology, a master's level psychologist and counselor. and I am here breaking down the Justice for John O'Keefe case. Welcome, everybody! Yay! So I'm going to turn this air conditioning off and probably start sweating soon. That's okay. I'd rather have you be able to hear me. I am plugged in, so I am on a cable line, so there should be no problems. We'll see. I don't know. About 5 minutes ago, my entire thing shut down. I had to switch computers, all happening with 5 minutes to go in the countdown. So, you know, StreamYard is what it is. We live, we learn. Welcome, everybody. So I am back from vacation. We had a lovely time at the beach. Actually, it was a wonderful time, a lovely time. I didn't work. It's like the first time in my entire life that I did not work on vacation. But it was great because what I got to do was like consume content, read a book, like kind of just see what else is going on outside of the world of, Norfolk County. And I explored all kinds of stuff that I thought maybe you guys might be interested in at some point. Just stuff about politics, stuff about Epstein, stuff about everybody and everything. True crime, of course, as always. Lots and lots of behavioral analysis. It was just awesome. So, but now I come back and wake up Tuesday morning, and I know I was supposed to be, I thought I was going to be back to work on Tuesday. It wound up that our trip was scheduled to be longer than I thought it was. So I didn't get back to work till today. So yesterday morning, I wake up, I'm at the beach, and all of a sudden, all this news is kind of like hitting my feed all at the same time. And it's like, WEEI has got Alan Jackson on. And then there's this whole hearing with the Myles King case. And this stuff is like all coming down at the same time. News on Proctor and the appeal. So all of that is happening. And I prepared this lovely video for you guys, and we're going to go through it all. And then I get back to work today, and I hit my email. And there's so many emails to go through. I didn't even get through a quarter, if I'm being there's no way. It's not even possible. I would need like literally every minute of every day to get through every single one right now. But one email that I did get to was very interesting. And so interesting that I decided we are definitely going to hit this topic tonight because I need your guys' feedback on this. I don't even know what to think of it. I don't know what to make of it. So I need all of you to help me sort through this. So we're going to go through a lot tonight, and we are definitely going to get to this email that I got. And first, I wanted to announce my first ever moderator in Denise. Hi, Denise. Yay. So she's not, I think, official yet because we have to do through StreamYard. You got to do this whole admin thing. And she's got to, accept an invite to be an administrator on the account. But we're getting there. And so welcome. You're amazing. I'm super, super excited to have you be a part of the team. Yay. So we're building this little team, which is very exciting. Completely not something I ever anticipated doing or having in my entire life. So, right, that's kind of the interesting thing about life, right? You just don't know what you're going to get. I know I see people asking about my nails. I will show them to you. They are a mess right now because I was at the beach. So I'm like, so the way the nail thing works, I actually stopped getting my nails done professionally like 3 years ago because it's just a fortune. And it's like this expense that just feels stupid. It's like, what am I spending on? And it's New York City. So it's not $40 when you get your nails done in New York City, just in case you didn't know that. It costs a lot of money. So I was like, I can't rationalize this. So now I have this giant box of like nail stuff. And that's what I do when I have like a free 20 seconds. I just sit with my giant nail box. But this is what it looks like when I'm in the process of switching over nails. So as they break, Then I will clean up the nail and like go to the next like nail, like sequence, right? It's not as planned out as it sounds, but because I know I get a lot of questions about them, there they are. It's very exciting actually in the world of nails because now everybody's doing these crazy nails, so you can get them much more easily and for a lot less money, which is awesome. Here in New York City, there's a woman who sells these nails that she makes for $100 a set. It's like, what? It's just too much. Crazy. They're beautiful, but it's a lot of money. So anyway, yeah, so a lot to go through. And like I said, I'm really excited to get your feedback on this email that I got today. So without further ado, we are going to, let's start with the video that I wanted to originally present and just kind of bring everybody up to speed as to where we are. There's been a number of things that I thought were worth giving a few minutes to, right? So of course, Alan Jackson joining Karen Reed's civil case. That one definitely did not surprise me. I'm not sure if that would have surprised you guys because I just feel like Alan Jackson is like synonymous with Karen Reed at this point. They are like one thing when it comes to anything related to her cases, I feel like. So I'm pretty sure that wherever there is a Karen Reed case, Alan Jackson will be not far behind. So right. So there's that. That was definitely not a surprise. But what is so exciting and actually quite stupid, honestly, on the part of the O'Keefe family, is the prospect of all of the discovery that would come as a result of a civil case. Tell me that isn't exciting. Like, that is so exciting. When I heard, in fact, that there is a motion to release the sidebars from the Karen Reed trials, I mean, that is like, how exciting is that? I'm almost like salivating at the idea of getting my hands on the sidebars. Oh man, that is just, but too amazing. I don't know how the DA's office is going to sneak their way out of that, but I just can't imagine that they want those out there. And I will say this. So let's get started, and I'll talk about it more as we go through, because there's a lot. There's just a lot. And you know, I want to tell you everything all at the same time. But those sidebars, I mean, that is going to be some incredible stuff. I cannot wait. There will come a day when all of this information is just available, when all the discovery comes out and all the text messages and the communications between Proctor and Morrissey and all the documents from the feds. Like, we're going to get it all. It's coming. It's coming. And it's just awesome to watch unfold, right? Okay, so let's bring up this quick video.
Your Face is returning to defend Karen Reed. Alan Jackson says he will be joining Reed's civil defense team as she gets ready to fight a wrongful death lawsuit filed by John O'Keefe's family. In his statement, he says this fight isn't over until every lie is exposed and every wrong is made right.
The band is not just staying together, getting back together, but we're intending on writing a few new chapters.
Alan, since the second trial, there have been videos, photos making their way around social media of inside 34 Fairview. It seems like the new owners let you guys inside, whether you were down in the basement looking at the flooring that was pulled up inside the garage.
Right.
There was a video of you outside yelling, and from the Albert's bedroom, you could hear yourself pretty clearly.
Did you hear me? Gee, you wonder why that wasn't allowed in the trial, right? Why didn't Judge Bev allow this video to come in? Seems to me like this would be pretty important information, no? Right? I mean, doesn't this seem like an important detail? If you're a juror in the Karen Reed case and you're stuck with this question of what does it sound like? If you're in, the bedroom of Brian Albert, what is he hearing on the front lawn? You don't think it would be an important detail, right? I mean, it just seems like there's so much common sense stuff that, jurors certainly didn't get, that we didn't get, right, throughout the trial, because the judge deliberately kept all of that information out. And the one thing that I so appreciate about Alan Jackson is his willingness to tell us that, right? He understands clearly his relationship with Judge Bev, and I'm just really grateful that he's willing to tell us about it. So Queen Olive Ruthan asks, I'm wondering how the McAlberts feel about the civil suit. Can the judge deny the release? So the way that I understand it, and of course I'm not an attorney, and if somebody is, please, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that so what happened with the sidebars was that originally the prosecution put in a motion to keep those confidential because they said it would prejudice the jury before the second trial. So in other words, it could have been or should have been automatically it's supposed to be released. That's like a given. Now, I say that, right, with an asterisk because we're in Norfolk County. And so, of course, anything that's a given isn't necessarily a given. So it's supposed to be released. However, they put the kibosh on that because the Commonwealth claimed that it would bias or prejudice the jury or jurors or potential jurors or whatever. And that is the reason why. That was also something they impounded with the names of the jurors from the first trial, which to my understanding have still not ever been released. So, the civil lawyers, everybody's asking, Karen Reed's lawyers, I guess, are asking that they release the sidebars for her civil case. Right. So now there's a legal motion for them to actually do it. And I guess that makes sense, right? Because do you see the prosecutor's office like going to any great lengths to help Karen Reed? At this point, right, they're not even giving her stuff back. They can't even get the prosecutor's office to respond. So, yeah, I mean, it's insane. So the answer is there should be no grounds to deny it. But I will say one other thing. The civil attorneys in their motion to try to get the sidebar discussions released, they put a little like option in there to just turn them over to the attorneys and not to the public. So if you, based on everything you know about the Commonwealth, what do you think is likely to have happen? And that's something I also want to make point to say, because one thing that I'm getting, and like, I don't like to even get into politics, right? Because who wants to talk about politics? It's just like the worst, right? Most decisive, most divisive, sort of, topic a person can touch on, right? But just broadly speaking, these people have so much power. They have way too much power. And when you're, I'm not somebody who's ever dealt with the legal system, right? Knock on wood and thank God. So I've never had to really stop and take a look. Oh, geez, what goes on in prosecutors' offices and defense attorneys' offices, and, how are people's rights being considered or not on a day-to-day basis? And it's just terrifying to see how much authority and power this whole system has, right? Like whether it's the prosecutor's office or these cops, or the DA himself, right? It's insane. If they get it in your head, man, that you did something wrong, whether you did it or not, look out, because they're coming, and it doesn't matter what's true. It just matters what they decide is true. So it's really, really scary, right? It's just terrifying. And that's kind of the thing, right? It's like these judges, and we're going to take a look here into the Myles King case, because of course that is a huge discussion and really, really important to what I want to get into in just a bit. And you're going to see what I think is starting to happen in Norfolk County now. And maybe this is just really obvious, and I'm just saying what everybody knows automatically. Now that there's so much attention on these people, now that we're all screaming and yelling about this, it's starting to piss off these judges. It definitely pissed off Judge Cannoni, And now it's pissing off Judge Krupp, who is overseeing the Myles King case. And you can tell based on how he handled this motion, this hearing yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before? The 5th, I think, Monday. And so just based on the way that that was all handled, it's pretty, yeah, it was yesterday, pretty, pretty disgusting that we would have an effect on how these people are operating. But I think that they're getting all of this obviously very unwanted attention, and they don't like it, right? They do not like it. So they're making defense attorneys, Capiccio in this case, they're making her pay.
Why don't somebody call 911?
This is the best. Thank you, Joey, for gifting membership. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Will there be any type of, I know that you guys have signed on for different media rights. Will there be any type of way to dive deeper into that? Will that come up in anything?
Well, the pain point that the plaintiffs are going to have in their civil suit is this is a very different lawsuit. It's not a criminal lawsuit, and it's certainly not being governed by Judge Beverly Cannoni, who kept out so much of that information. That's why you're seeing it on social media rather than having seen it in the courtroom. All of it was relevant. We attempted to get most of it in, and we were denied, both in the first trial and the second trial. So this new lawsuit is probably a very good platform, I'd say, I would suggest to you, for a lot of that information to be aired out and aired out completely. So yeah, I don't. That's not the last you're going to see of that information.
Just
that and a lot of other information.
To be clear, when you said this new lawsuit is, so you're joining her civil defense team to defend against the wrongful death suit. Are you also? Correct. Is Karen also planning a federal lawsuit on this case?
So that's a interesting question, not one that I'm willing to talk about right now.
The legal team that you have joined has sent subpoenas to the Mass State Police and the Norfolk DA's office, seeking information on witnesses who testified at the trial, on Michael Proctor, and on evidence from the federal investigation. We discussed the federal investigation a lot on this show. From your perspective, in your opinion, did that federal investigation end?
No. I've never heard of such a thing. I know what Mr. Brennan said. I know what the hired gun said in court about being.
So just quickly on this, I have to agree with Alan Jackson here that the Commonwealth should have, if I'm, Hank Brennan, I'm being paid all this money to come in and save the day. One of the first things that I had to do was find a way to take the air out of the sails, so to speak, with this federal investigation. And so, of course, it benefited them greatly to be able to say, oh, nope, this case, nothing to see here, it's dropped. And Alan Jackson is right. I mean, how could any of us know? If they really did drop the investigation, are they going to call up Hank Brennan and say, yep, okay, investigation's over now? Right? I mean, has anyone ever heard of the feds doing that in any situation? So while I'm sure that, obviously the case may not have been front and center or very active, I agree that with what Alan Jackson is saying, what if they got new information and make a determination that there's, evidence of, whatever, right? A crime, a cover up, etc.
Contacted. And there being a closure to the case. We weren't contacted. I was never contacted. I've never heard a word of that directly from the horse's mouth. And I've been doing this for a long time. And I can tell you it's not a thing. It's just not Greg, you just don't do that. As a prosecutor, especially a federal prosecutor, you don't look at the target, call the target and say, oh yeah, we're done. We're done here. What if something new comes up tomorrow or next week or next month? And you're within the statute. You don't, quote unquote, close investigations. So that's something that I'd never heard of. And I no, in my opinion, there's no such thing as a quote unquote closed investigation. They can say whatever they want over at the Norfolk DA's office. I'm sure that that was a curated comment or a series of comments, but I'll leave it to the feds to do what the feds do best, and that is to investigate. And that's exactly what I think is continuing to happen. But that's just my opinion.
Alan, you discussed objectivity. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you miss Judge Bev?
Great question.
Oh my God.
We all miss Judge Bev.
If I go the rest of my life and never have to walk into a room with Judge Bev, God bless her, it'll be too soon. Yeah. And by the way, that's the other thing is, I don't have to say it. I was right there in the mix. I was in the fishbowl. I was wondering if others were clocking what I was seeing. Sometimes you're so far in it. It's like a fish that doesn't know it's wet. I wasn't sure if others were seeing what I was seeing inside that courtroom, but a judge's job is to absolutely be unbiased, to put all of the biases aside. Everybody comes into life in any situation with certain biases. The job of a judge is to put those biases aside. And she showed very, very quickly and undeniably that she could not and would not do that. There were rampant biases in favor of the prosecution, in favor of the Commonwealth, in favor of Mr. Lally and Ms. McLaughlin, in favor of Mr. Brennan once he took over, and against the defense from nearly day one, nearly from the moment I walked into court.
And you know what? That's when he said that, the first thought that popped into my head, because obviously we've all thought that for a very long time, that she was just biased to such an extreme that it seemed like, is this real? Are we really, could this even be really happening? And it can only imagine what it must have felt like to be one of these attorneys who had to deal with this. I mean, unbelievable. And yet, despite that, Karen Reed wins. So what does that tell you about this case, right? And the other interview that I don't think we'll probably get to, I did pull some clips because I wanted to talk about a few points that Ms. Kate Peter made on the first ever Jess Machado show. Congratulations to Jess for her new podcast. Very interesting first show and opening lineup, one of whom was Ms. Kate Peter. And couple of interesting points. One thing that I like when I hear people who know the Alberts and the McCabe's, who know them personally, I like hearing what they have to say about it, as disgraceful as it may be, and often is. I like what they have to say, like listening, right? Okay, this is interesting. This is, what their point of view is. And of course, they're all running with the, quote, smoking gun that is the telematics information. And don't worry, I'm working on that too, because I'm so sick of hearing pro-prosecution folks talking about the telematics, because when you really look closely at the telematics, it doesn't say that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe with her car. So it drives me nuts when I hear it. And I have actually, as tedious and boring as it is, I've actually sat through all of that testimony because I am obsessive and I want to know, am I crazy? Is this information, are they right? And I'm just totally blind, totally biased and brainwashed and all this. And I yes, I say that. And then I, catch a glimpse of a Jennifer McCabe, 5 minutes on cross-examination. And I'm like, oh, right. No. Not brainwashed. Would be nice. Would be nice if I was just totally paranoid, because then it wouldn't mean that we have these people out there in the world that are just very sick puppies who are responsible for the death of Officer John O'Keefe and still walking around. But that's neither here nor there. Let's continue.
The first time on September 25th, 2022. So no, there was a breakdown of the entire system, and she was part of it.
Do you believe that there was a conspiracy to frame Karen Reed, or we debated this a lot on this show with Curtis, or do you think it was just awful investigative work?
It's a combination of both, for sure, in my opinion. A combination of both. There was an awful investigative work, but it wasn't just incompetence. It went beyond just incompetence. You could read in Michael Proctor's text messages that it wasn't just incompetence. He had a view of her. He had a thought process about her from nearly day one, right? 16 hours into the investigation, he was already determining that he was going to make sure that it was going to get pinned on the girl. She's going to pay for this. Right? He said it out loud. He said the quiet part out loud. So it's not just incompetence. So now once you go beyond, outside the parameters of just incompetence and being stupid, which there was a lot of idiots involved in the investigation as well, once you go beyond those parameters, now you start getting into the very troubling area of a cover-up. Well, we know that tragically, an officer has lost his life. And we also know that we're going to pin it on this girl. So what does that mean by definition, Greg? What does that mean by definition? It means that you're going to cover up what actually did happen.
All right. So this is the question that I am posing to all of us tonight. And obviously, we've all been sitting with this question for a long time. And what I would like to really explore more thoroughly is this question. Are we dealing with now? And when I say this question, I know the people in the House, we obviously know, if they're responsible for killing John O'Keefe, which I believe them to be, that is a cover-up. The question that has always remained ever present for me is, to what degree does that then cross over into the police department directly, right? Because there's an argument to be made that Michael Proctor, Brian Tully, Yuri Buchanan, that these guys believed wholeheartedly Karen Reed did this and then went to great lengths to try to prove that she was guilty, right? Confirmation bias on steroids. Okay. Well, thanks to our Swedish friend, Suzanne, who spent I can't even imagine how much time, because I tried. I did a cursory attempt to do what she did. And I mean, it would be an unimaginable amount of time to go through this. She went through the videos from Brian Higgins at the Canton Police Department and noted some pretty interesting things. Now, I get all kinds of emails, and but just the lengths that, first off, that she went to put all this together, and then had to have the whole thing translated into English. So I appreciate the effort doubly and understand how hard that can be to make sure that having to kind of trust that Google Translator is gonna get the message across. So we're going to switch over. I want to start by pulling up, just to sort of set the context, some of that back and forth from the trial with Alan Jackson and Yuri Buchanan. And then we're going to jump into bits of the video. And you guys tell me what you think. This is pretty interesting stuff. So we'll jump over here and then we'll come back and you tell me what you think. Like I said, pretty interesting stuff. All right, let me make this big.
Back to Canton PD. Did you at some point recover some videos or a series of electronic data that purported to be videos from Canton PD in furtherance of your investigation?
Yes.
Now, one thing, I'm not going to do a full behavioral analysis of Yuri Buchanan, but when this trial was underway, I spent an incredible amount of time analyzing Buchanan. It just so happened that for the 2 days or 3 days that he was on the stand, I had an opportunity to just sit home and in real time stare at his big fat head. So if anybody is, that if there's one person that I got to know in quotes, throughout the course of the trial, it was Yuri Buchanan. So after I watched the video or read the email and the clips from Suzanne from Sweden, who sent me all of this stuff, I went back and I started here. And what I realized was that the moment that Alan Jackson switches in his cross-examination to this topic and mentions video, Yuri Buchanan has a moment to stop and process it, and then immediately all of the stress indicators go through the roof. So just note his body language in this very beginning part as we kind of just walk through the intro to these videos. We're not going to go through the whole thing. It's long, it's tedious, but I want you to see the body language of Yuri Buchanan because there are a lot of tells that I would not have ever stopped to even notice if it wasn't for the fact that I had gotten this email.
And to whom did you deliver these videos, and whom were they requested by?
The initial request was by Michael Proctor. I delivered them to him.
Okay. Since that delivery, have you seen these videos?
Yes, I have.
Okay. No, I'm holding a flash drive that I'd like to have, with the court's permission, I'd like to have marked as next in order for introduction. But I'll play the first couple of seconds of it and just establish the foundation first with the court's permission.
Have you shown it or discussed this with Mr. Brennan?
I just discussed it with Mr. Brennan at the break.
What's the Commonwealth's position? I have no idea what it is.
Sure, we can mark it. Yes. Mr. Brennan said he'd like to review them before they get entered into evidence. We can mark it for ID for purposes of this examination.
I don't expect I'll object. I just want to review.
Okay. So we'll mark it for identification, please, Madam Clerk.
Exhibit G for identification.
Just to establish the foundation so we know what we're talking about, did you see on some of the electronic devices that you picked up in furtherance of this investigation video of somebody outside? Now, the outside cameras or outside camera view at Canton PD at about 1:30 in the morning on January 29th, 2022.
The digital video, one of the collection items. It wasn't a device. It was, well, I guess it is a device, but.
All right. Yuri Buchanan does not do this kind of fumbling. It is very out of character for him to be this, unsure, to be this messy, to be this sloppy with words. And so it is very clear from his body language and then from the way that he all of a sudden can't get a sentence out that this topic is a sensitive topic. This is distancing. What Yuri Buchanan is doing, this is distancing. What Yuri Buchanan is doing is he's trying to put space between him and these videos. He's trying to say, I don't know anything about this. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Michael Proctor was the one that dealt with the videos. I have no idea. And you can see that all of a sudden he can't speak, which is extremely unlike Yuri Buchanan, right? Think about his testimony. In fact, some of the jurors, more than one, pointed directly to him as the turning point for them in the trial because of his behavior on the stand, because of his defensiveness, his arrogance, the way that he came across was off-putting. And that's because he goes to great lengths to try to present himself in a very self-assured way. So when all of a sudden you have Yuri Buchanan like fumbling with his words, it's noteworthy. It doesn't happen very often throughout the trial, right? So it means that what's going on right now is sensitive for this man.
The digital storage that was collected had video from external view of the PD. I do not remember specifically seeing an individual, but I did review it.
Being of the parking lot area, at least one of them, one of the clips being of the parking.
So just to be clear, about what's happening in this very, brief exchange. Yuri Buchanan is saying, yeah, I didn't see anybody in any of these videos. He's right now saying, I didn't review videos where I saw somebody walking around, at the Canton Police Department. That is the claim by Mr. Yuri Buchanan.
Area outside Canton PD.
I don't remember seeing outside parking lot. I'd have to see it.
I understand. Do you remember another clip being of the outside Sally Port, there's a pedestrian door, not the big roll-up door, but pedestrian door, someone going in and out of the pedestrian door?
I know the view you're talking about, but specifically what you're saying, I would have to see the video, tell you if I saw it or not.
And I'm asking a couple of these other questions. I think I may know what the answer is. There's another, do you remember another video being an internal corridor, looking down the hallway, seeing someone walk up the back?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and then one on the outside, again, sort of passing from right to left, may not be intended to a parking lot, but at least an outdoor view of someone moving from front right to front left across the camera angle.
I don't remember that.
Okay, so I'm going to jump here. I'm going to jump to the segment of the video where we see Brian Higgins walking down the hallway at the Canton Police Station. So that is where we're going to jump to. We'll come back to more of Buchanan. But what I wanted you to just get a very brief taste of, and I'm going to put something together that's a lot more comprehensive of this. I want you to get a sense of his body language and the fact that this topic for Buchanan was clearly sensitive. There's no other way to say it. Absolutely, undeniably, it is a sensitive topic for him.
Timestamp and date. A little bigger, Mr. Walk, if you could.
All right. So I'm going to try to bypass some of. We're not going to listen to Alan Jackson here. I just want you to take a look at the video itself, right? So you remember this, of course, we all remember this. It is simply a video of Brian Higgins walking down the hallway at the Canton Police Department, right? Very simple, okay? Seems like it is what it is, right? Now, I know that there was some controversy about the face. Some people felt that he looked more like Brian Albert than Brian Higgins. We will address that in a minute. Fine. But for the most part, I didn't see anybody. There was some controversy about, I think, the shoes and whether or not there was like a blood print, I think, left on a shoe print in blood, or I saw someone talking about that. But aside from that, I did not see anybody anywhere reporting that video was not correct, that it was somehow doctored or false. Okay. So let me now forward you through this. So in the email, and thanks to our super sleuth, Suzanne, she recognized that around Brian Higgins, as he's walking through this corridor, there's kind of like a white glow. And if you look very closely at the, very, very closely, you sort of zoom in on each frame of the video, you will see that this white glow legitimately looks like a copy and paste job. So let me get to that part of this video so that you can see. Okay, so here's the glow. Hold on, let me see. So you see it right there. You just about see, I'm going to show you a close-up photo, but you can kind of see it. Let's see. You see it right there. You're starting to see the glow around Brian Higgins. You see right there, it's like a messy cut and paste job. Like somebody had a video of Brian Higgins walking down the hallway, cut that out, and then pasted over a video of him in the Canton PD hallway, right? It really does look like it could be a copy and paste job. It really does. So here is another example of not only that, but also when you get closer and you start really examining this at a much more, with a high level of scrutiny, you start to see that, right, something isn't right, right? Like there's these blurs and these places where, you know, like the size, the proportions of the body are completely off. Like look at the left side versus the right side. Now, this is where I need all of your help to try to sort of suss this out, right? Is this, if I was looking at a Ring camera video and we zoomed in, is it going to be that, you know, if we're going frame by frame, sometimes the video is just crappy video? I mean, is that likely? Right? So you tell me. Let me keep going here. And again, you start to see that there's no head, right? There's no head in this picture. It is very, very bizarre. So what was suggested was literally going frame by frame, pausing, playing with the contrast to ultimately find, right, what might be exposed if you are looking with that level of scrutiny and detail at this video. Now, here's what I will also say. This sounds crazy, Sam. You're delusional. This is paranoid. And that would be true, except for the fact that this is exactly what the Commonwealth pulled, not only with the mirrored video, but it is also what they pulled with the taillight, right? Hank Brennan making a huge fuss about the fact that there was a white light emanating from Karen Reed's taillight, when all of us know that that's not possible. That is not possible. That Karen Reed's taillight, once the diffusers were broken, it didn't emanate white light. It emanated no light, right? Once the diffusers are broken on that particular type of taillight, there would not have been bright white light. But of course, Hank Brennan, I mean, I'm assuming, didn't do his homework, didn't know that. I have to believe, I want to believe that Hank Brennan is not in on whatever garbage video editing is going on. But there is no question that that stuff is edited. Those images, those videos, those photos are edited. There's no question that in the Ring video, and then the images that were taken from the Ring video in John O'Keefe's One Meadows driveway, Karen Reed's Lexus, those videos were edited. There's no question. There are dancing blobs over the taillight. And I tried to find this for tonight, but I just didn't have enough time. There was actually, it's very interesting, when Hank Brennan in the second trial was showing those same still images from those Ring video images specifically, from that video specifically, notice that the contrast was completely different. Like he went to great lengths to change the contrast so that you couldn't see those blurs even more, right? So you say, well, Sam, you're crazy, you're paranoid. Well, am I? Right? Am I? Because they've done it before. They've done it. Let's think about this. They've done it with more videos in the Karen Reed trial than they haven't done it with. Or Proctor just deleted videos, just erased them altogether, just said, we don't like the evidence that comes from these ring videos, so we're just going to delete the videos altogether. How do we know that he did that? That's not me just making, accusations. We know that because David DeCicco took notes on the videos, and in one of the videos, and one of his notes on little notepads, those little yellow sticky pad notes, he put the time and date of what he was watching and names having seen when Karen Reed arrives back at One Meadows on the morning of January 29th of 2022. So we know that there was a ring video of it, and we know that Michael Proctor deleted it. So the fact that, okay, you're paranoid, it doesn't work, right? What, they would be above doctoring video? Okay, this is only the beginning, by the way. Notice, the white light around this figure. And in this image, what does that even look? What is that? That looks like some kind of a pole, right? With a fake mannequin head on, like a wig off the back. I mean, it's certainly doesn't look like Brian Higgins, does it? I don't know. It does not look like Brian Higgins. That, I don't know. I don't know. But when you look closely at this, and it's interesting. It's interesting. Okay. So now we're going to look at the build. Now, Suzanne is, in her email to me, was putting forth a theory of the case, as well as sending these images. And she felt like maybe, there was an intentional effort to make this face some version of Brian Higgins, and with pieces of Brian Higgins and Brian Albert. Now, I don't know what the incentive to do that might be. We all could probably come up with one, but whoever was doing the editing job here, what is this? What is going on in this video? What is going on in this image? All of us saw all over X, all over the, any social media that you were looking at during the trial. After this video, was in real time during the Karen Reed trial, when it was presented, we all saw claims that it looked more like Brian Albert and not like Brian Higgins, or that there was something strange about how Brian Higgins presented, how he looked in the video. Well, yeah, there is something strange. Little strange. What do you think? It's certainly compelling. It's certainly interesting. And in the email, one thing that she was asking me to look at was the different, the beard, the facial structure, the eyes of Colin, just sort of comparing the faces to see, who does this face actually look like? I don't know. I mean, here's the thing, okay? Brian Higgins, throughout, when he was testifying under cross-examination, Brian Higgins wanted to tell us, remember, he points out to Alan Jackson that there is video footage, that there's probably, I'm sure there's video footage, right? He's talking about being at the police station after being at 34 Fairview. And on a number of occasions, he makes a point to say, I'm sure there's video footage, right? So Higgins knows there's video footage, and he's wants to share that with us. He wants the defense to know that he wants them to know that he's aware that there's video. And look, there's video that backs up my story. Well, that's odd, right? Okay. Maybe that's nothing. Maybe he's just, right? Oh, yeah, I'm sure that there was a video. In other words, I'm sure that there's a video at the Canton PD. I'm sure there's a video of it. But it's a little strange that he repeatedly points that out to Alan Jackson. Okay. Now, let's take a closer look at Brian Higgins's hand. And again, you tell me what you think. Okay, so we have his right hand there. Now, in this image, obviously, the color saturation is completely altered. And there was an effort to try to point out that the colors were completely different on the hands. Okay. And again, now you're noticing, right, that it's not just that there's a color differential, there's some kind of swelling on what appears to be the hand of Brian Higgins. So, okay. All right. Interesting. So far, okay. Interesting. Interesting. I don't know. So just so you know, and Honey 2800's asking about where they did this, some of the editing. The answer is no. This was all some very shoddy cell phone effort. So there was no like high tech. In fact, one of the things that was communicated to me in her email was that she did not have the editing capacity, didn't have the laptop or the ability to do like the high end, cleaning up of the video. So, which made it even more impressive because of the, the effort that went into it, given that there wasn't any kind of like, laptop or significant editing software program that you could go through and actually utilize. So, I don't know. But, I will tell you that this person put a lot of time in, So, but let's keep going because these next clips are the ones that I think are really the most interesting. Okay. Now, obviously, we all know about the plow, right? So, and this is a direct quote. You can see that there's a constant blur on part of the plow in the video. And you can see that there is a figure standing by the plow with something in their hand. So now we're getting into that very long video that I'm sure all of us have spent some time trying to make sense of, where allegedly Brian Higgins is like moving cars around, right? And you tell me what you think. But it does appear that there are what could very well be other people in the images. You tell me. So, and by the way, some of these are much easier to see than others. Some of them are really challenging to see. Some of them are pretty straightforward. The interesting thing about this, image is that it matches, if you look at the video from the dash cams, this is very, it's comparable to what the cops were wearing. Certainly Mike Lank has on a two-toned, like North Face kind of a thing. And I think Sergeant Good also has kind of a comparable, I don't know if it's exactly white and black, but it also is kind of a comparable jacket, winter police jacket of some kind that does look like it has the black shoulders, right? And interesting, Mike Lank actually identifies himself that way in the video on when he's giving his testimony about being on the phone, not knowing who he's talking to the morning of, the incident. And these are, by the way, in addition to what all of us would believe to be Brian Higgins. So these are not images of Brian Higgins. These would be images in addition to Brian Higgins in the video. I don't know. Do these appear to be people? There are a few images where it appears like Brian Higgins is with somebody else. Now, I'd have to go back. Is it this one, maybe? I'd have to go back and look at the video in context to be able to tell you who it is and when it is in the video. Because again, I just got this today. So I have not been able to put, like literally a few hours ago. So I haven't been able to try to put it into context of any kind, where it is in the video, when it's there, where Higgins is in relationship to the rest of these images. But it's interesting. Could it be that these videos were altered in some way? And it makes sense to some degree. So I'll show you this and then I'll pause it. And in this, what Suzanne is saying is that, first of all, this same image appears in the video with Brian Higgins and then again at a later time. And that you can see that it's just a pretty, like it looks like it could have been cut and paste. Cut from one and paste in somewhere else. Why? I don't know. So you tell me, do you think that there could have been other people in, let's say, for example, Kevin Albert could have, and I guess a better way to say it, let me see if I can get back to you guys here. There we are. I couldn't see you for a minute. A better way to say it is, do these guys, could they have been involved? Could have Mike Lank, Kevin Albert, actually from the police station, could they have been involved? What do you think? I don't know. And we know that Chief Berkowitz was definitely, involved in some form or fashion. And it's tough to talk about a man who's, been through so much. And, Chief Berkowitz, I've done a lot of close investigating on Berkowitz, and he was a very beloved figure. People loved him, and it would be tragic, right, to uncover some kind of corruption of any kind of significance that involved him as well. But it's a little shady to me, right? So, and also, that's right. People are talking about Brian Tully. I absolutely believe that Brian Tully, but again, here's the thing. Brian Tully would have been involved with planting taillight. He had to have been. There's no other way. Brian Tully, by his own admission, tells us that he is at Canton PD before he heads over to 34 Fairview, and that it's at the same time that we know Karen's SUV is being driven basically into the Sallyport. So we know that they're going to overlap, right? Very likely. We also know, and this is another really interesting detail. I heard Alan Jackson talking about how he thinks Kevin O'Hara was a stand-up cop, that he was not in on whatever, any kind of cover-up of some kind. But it's interesting because, number one, a couple of the jurors mentioned that he seemed particularly nervous while he was testifying. And number two, that he kind of goes out of his way to make it sound like the search team investigation happens earlier than it does. And again, that's pretty shady to me, right? If it doesn't matter, if those taillight pieces are not in any way shady or planted or messed with, why does it matter what time the search team investigation happens? Why does it matter if you spent a week, 3 weeks, 10 minutes, acquiring taillight pieces? See, that's the thing about this case. Hank Brennan used to talk all the time about consciousness of guilt. The problem with consciousness of guilt is that this group of people do nothing but incriminate themselves over and over and over again. It's wild. So what do you think? Could those videos have been doctored? Now, one thing I know I have to do on my own, because I do have, the capacity to do maybe a more thorough editing job, or in other words, go in and mess with the contrast and, slow down frame by frame, all of that. I don't know. Do we think that there are people? Now, if there are people in these videos, we would be talking about the Canton Police Department. Those are the folks that we would be, directly likely pointing to. And we know, remember, Mike Lank is a dear friend of the Albert family. He's the one that got Chris out of trouble, actually put himself in pretty significant jeopardy by getting into a physical altercation with somebody who was threatening Chris Albert. Ended up in an actual street brawl. So, I don't know. I really don't know. So you guys tell me, what do you think? Could this be video footage that's doctored? And the other thing, beside that one picture that looked like it was, with the off-white, the black, the two-toned sweater or jacket, that very much looks like an outline of the jacket that we see later on, a few hours later, that Mike Lank or Sergeant Good is wearing. The other piece, and this is something that I really need you guys to tell me, because I don't know, the frame by frame analysis of Higgins walking down the hallway with that white glow around him, that is another one that to me is very shady. Very shady. That to me is pretty questionable, right? Okay, so Eric Alameda says, go back to Morrissey's statement. Take out the Karen part of Morrissey's statement. Morrissey said exactly what happens to John. John was jumped and beaten by Higgins and the Alberts. Yeah, so, and I also want to make sure and remember to mention this, because it's something that never came up in any kind of significant way during either trial. I never understood why it never came up in any kind of significant way during the trial. But John had bruises pretty much in two places on his body, on the backs of his hands, right? He has significant bruising. His left hand, and I'm doing this backwards in my mind, I believe it to be his left hand. Is it his left hand or his right hand that has the big red? One of his hands has the big red bruise. The other hand is puffy, like it's swollen. And because we get to see both hands kind of back to back next to each other, you can see that one of his hands is swelling up and the other is all bruised. Now, again, it doesn't come up in any kind of significant way throughout the trial. It does come up in Yuri Buchanan mentions the bruising. At one point, I think under direct, and he's simply just saying, what did you notice at the hospital when you went and saw John O'Keefe, the morning of January 29th? And he mentions that there was a bruise on one of his hands. But this is something that doesn't come up a lot. People overlook it, they forget about it, and then they'll email me and they'll say, well, do you think that John could have slipped and fallen? Or could have Chloe jumped on him and he hit his head as he fell backwards, maybe not on the grass, but on steps or whatever? And the part that I think we don't want to ever forget is that he had bruises on the backs of his hands. And the only time I've ever seen a swollen hand like the one that is John O'Keefe's hand that morning is when a friend of mine accidentally or was upset about a girl and he punched the wall in the 7th grade and his hand blew up. Right? So that's the only time that I have ever seen someone's hand blow up like that is from a fight. So when you say things like, could it have been that John just fell? To me, the answer is no. And the reason why the answer is no is because he had these very significant bruises on the backs of his hands. You tell me, how else would he get those? He has no bruises anywhere else on his body. None, anywhere. Right? So tell me, where did they come from? So, I mean, look, if it wasn't for the bruises on the backs of John's hands, I honestly think that that would open up the door significantly to the possibility of a lot more potential possibilities for what happens to this guy. But unfortunately, because of the bruises on the backs of his hands and because of the fact that we have Brian Higgins pointing at him at the bar and saying, like, you, me, let's go. Then he texts him to follow up to say, where are you? Some people think that that was like, that text was after the fact, that it was like an incriminating text. To me, that text seemed like he legitimately was waiting for John to show up, right? Like, why would Brian Higgins? To me, that just seems like the dumbest move. I mean, maybe it was after the fact. I don't remember the exact timing. I'd have to look at it bit by bit, but I do believe that that text comes before they pull up in front of 34 Fairview. So again, to me, it's so clear what happened here. I mean, right? Am I delusional? Is this not just really clear what happened here? And if you think about the issue with Mike Lank, so going back to the story about Michael Lank and Chris Albert and how, 20 years ago, whenever it was, I think it was like, Chris was 22, I think he ends up telling us. So however long ago that was, whenever Chris Albert was 22 years old, he's outside of a bar. He sees Mike Lank out of a uniform and he says, oh, these guys are going to beat me up, save me. And Lank tries to get out and say, all right, we're not going to fight here. But the guys that they're fighting with know him. And they say, screw you. I don't care who you are. I'm going to fight you anyway. The two of them get into a fight, or all of them get into a fight. Those guys end up getting arrested. And in a way, this is the same exact thing. It's like the same thing. Could it not be obvious that they call Mike Lank, that Brian Albert calls Lank and says, we need you, right? I'll meet you at Canton PD. Think about it. Who is Brian Higgins talking to? So one of the things I left out here, and you know what? I'll show it to you here if I can bring it up quick. There's a moment during, again, the cross-examination where of Yuri Buchanan, when Alan Jackson is presenting these videos to him, and he's saying, who is that guy? Remember, we all remember those videos, right? Who is that guy? What time is it on the screen? And you'll see that Alan Jackson tragically gives Yuri Buchanan an answer that I wish he didn't. I wish we could have had an opportunity for Yuri Buchanan to have to give us this answer himself, because he really lets him off the hook by giving him an excuse, an easy out. But you remember there's 6 minutes missing from this video, right? There's 6 minutes missing. Alan Jackson makes us, as boring as it could be, go through and bit by bit point out during that video when Brian Higgins is walking down the hallway, he makes us go through line by line and say there's 6 minutes missing, right? So again, is that just, a coincidence, a quirk, motion activation? The camera just misfires, doesn't catch a few seconds here or there? Or is that something significant? And again, remember who these people are. Michael Lank is the not lieutenant detective. He's the sergeant homicide detective. So he's the guy, he's like the Michael Proctor, but on the Canton side. He's the guy that then calls all the guys at CPAC, calls Buchanan and says, hey, are you guys coming or what? Right? So I think it's worth investigating, right? Are there other people? Because think about the significance. If there are other cops in that video, if there are actually other people helping Brian Higgins on that morning, think about how incriminating that is. That to me would be incriminating to the point like beyond, right? Beyond. So yes, Graceful says, I'm not a doctor or nurse, but don't you need blood flow to make a bruise? You absolutely do. Excellent point, Graceful. Excellent point. Right. So what's the implication there? Oh, he was alive. He was alive when whatever happened where he got the bruises on the backs of his hand happened. Yes. Correct. So that happened when? Before he fell and hit his head. And another thing that for whatever reason never comes up, never really gets addressed during the trials, and I'm not suggesting that they did anything wrong. I get you cannot possibly bring every single piece of this case in front of a jury. I mean, it's just not possible. There's just way, way, way too much. But the fact that there's vomit on John's clothing, think about how many witnesses testified across both trials to John O'Keefe not being noticeably intoxicated, not being drunk to the point where he would be vomiting on himself. Like everybody says it, right? Well, now, okay, do we believe them entirely? No, I'm sure they're minimizing for their own sake so that they don't seem like drunk asses, right? But there's vomit on this man's clothing. So you tell me, if you get hit by a car, it's seconds. And we saw that, remember, from all of the ARCA extra testing. What is the one thing that we heard so many times from both of them, right? We heard from both of them that it's like seconds, that an accident would happen faster than like you could blink and cut that into like, 3/4. In other words, it is so fast, right? If he was to really get hit, he would have gotten hit so quickly. Okay. There's no chance for vomit to come forward on his body. And if he had vomited after the fact as a result of a car accident, he would have choked on it. It wouldn't ended up on his clothing in front of him. And then, of course, there's no blood evidence, right? This guy's got this huge head gash. There's no blood. There's 4 drops? Come on. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. So there's just so much evidence. So much evidence. Yeah. So, and again, how do you account for all of that, right? How do you account for all of that if all that has happened, he's been hit by a car? And the other thing that actually, I had somebody, and I thank you, I have to double check who it was that sent me this. It was a very old email that was buried. Sometimes I'll go back and I'll, switch my inbox so that the old messages are in front in case I miss any. And I saw that somebody had sent me information on the Lexus SUV. Turned out that this car has an automatic brake backing feature.
And that was the question that I had in my mind, because coincidentally, I was in, a friend of my daughter's parents' car, and we're driving. She's, whatever, trying to back up and making a 3-point turn. And all of a sudden the car like jolts forward. And she's like, that's the auto brake feature. Apparently there was something she didn't see behind the car. It turns out that Karen Reed had one of those also. So the idea that she could have just backed up into him and not seen him and it would have been an accident, it's not possible, because the car would have stopped it from happening, right? And again, that's something else just like never came up, but I wouldn't have even known to think about that had I not had that experience with somebody else backing their car up and then went and said, oh, okay, this must have happened she must have had it too. And then somebody, luckily for me, sent me all of the specs on that very specific model of a Lexus SUV 2023. It turns out it does have that feature. So again, it's another stop fail. And how that didn't come out, again, I don't know. Does it matter? I don't know. To me, again, you add all this stuff up and it just seems like, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. So I'm going to the chat here. Let's see. Sheila Casio, I like that name, sends $5 and says, have you shared this with YouTubers who posted blobs on the taillight video? I just found this out. This showed up in my email and I got it literally 2 hours before I am sitting here with you. So I didn't even really have time. The only thing that I had time to do was take the single images and put them into a video file so that they were a little bit more digestible. Otherwise, I was going to be trying to show you guys these little tiny photos that came from screenshots of these videos. So I haven't done anything with them yet, but show them to you. And largely also because I want feedback from you. I don't know what to make of them. To me, it does appear like there could be people, hidden in this snow-covered video. And because of the fact that I am aware of the blobs on the taillight, to me, it seems potentially possible that they could have altered these videos. I mean, oh my God, this group of people, they just have no shame. And that's the point. So the larger point, and I hear people, I saw somebody complaining about this. The larger point and the reason why I started today with talking about the Alan Jackson interview and this concept, this question, the larger question about discovery, the Commonwealth, Proctor trying to get his job back. We think about the balls on Michael Proctor, and it's not even that. Think about what it must be like, how bad it must be at the Norfolk County DA's homicide detective unit if Michael Proctor truly believes that he deserves to have his job back. He thinks that he is entitled to be a police officer. He doesn't understand what he did that was so wrong and so bad and why he was singled out. He doesn't understand that. Why was he let go when nobody else was? They were all just given slaps on their wrist, right? Like slaps on the back of their hand. And I'm being fired. So when you start thinking about that, right? Think about how egregious, like, these are prosecutors. This isn't a defense attorney putting forth videos like this. These are supposed to be the guys and the girls that are, they're wearing the justice cape. These are supposed to be our heroes, right? Doing the work of keeping the world a safer place for all of us. And instead, what do we have? We have these folks sitting somewhere on a screen like we're all at and editing videos so that it looks like Karen Reed is guilty, manipulating videos from outside of the Sally Port, outside of the Canton Police Department to make it look like there aren't cops helping Brian Higgins. Seriously? And I don't know if that, I know that Suzanne, the person that sent me this, did not create a bruise on the back on Brian Higgins' hand. That wasn't, manufactured. Is that really a bruise? I don't know. We all have access to the video, so I guess we could all play with it to find out. Could it be? Sure. Yeah, it could be. But then that also means that there may have been an effort to hide that too, right? But think about the balls that you have to think that this is okay. Like, it actually means that paid professionals, law enforcement officers, were sitting in a room on a computer and doctoring the taillight video so that when Karen Reed is the video where, Hank Brennan holds up as the big aha video that there was that big piece missing on Karen Reed's right taillight, this big white shiny light, right? The same video that I saw at one point, Court TV, like playing over and over and over again to try to discern if it was a red light, if it was a white light. Lo and behold, it wouldn't have made a difference because a white light, we learned from Be in Trouble 31, thank God for him, was not possible. With this particular tail light, had the diffusers broke, you wouldn't see white, you would see nothing, you would see no light at all. So that white blob that was superimposed over Karen's right tail light in that ring video was placed there by a law enforcement professional. There's no other possibility. How else would it get there? It wasn't there. It appears there, right? Somebody put it there. So who put it there? Let me see. Do I have this video right here? Let me see. I think I do. Let me see if I can pull it up for us. I do. I had it for something I was working on earlier, and I might have it right here. Let me take a quick look through this to see, so that I can just show you instead of, be talking about it. Hang on here. Here it is. Yeah, this is it, I think. It's maddening to me because these people, the long and short of it, these people believe that what they're doing is acceptable behavior, that it's okay, right? Madam August Butterfly sends $4.99 and says, yeah, remodel rundown of the Alberts home. Exactly. I mean, that is like a whole nother discussion, right? We get rid of our dog, who, by the way, and I saw somebody in the chat who was actually somebody who specialized in working with German Shepherds talking about this earlier. Yeah. Like, where was the dog? The dog would have been alerting. Like, I mean, look, we all know the case, right? Backwards and forwards. Have you ever seen so much in one case, as much incriminating evidence? And that's the thing that gets me from these judges, whether it's Judge Krupp, whether it's Bev, whether, it's Cosgrove or the prosecutor's office. And I will bring up here in a second some clips from earlier. There is a cardinal sin of hubris that these people all seem to believe that they can just do whatever they want. There is no consequences. There's no oversight. They just get away with it, and they know they're going to. That's the part that is really insidious. It's the same, like it's this subtle. There's this subtle, like, just air, systemic air amongst all of these people in Norfolk County that they can just get away with it, that they can just do whatever they want to do. And it's maddening. It's disgusting. It is so disturbing to me. So, and I will show you, talk about body language analysis. Watch this.
Proctor has since been fired from the Massachusetts State Police. The ex-trooper has since appealed his firing.
Colton, we learned today this case will play out to begin on August 26th. Civil Service Commission has this question to answer. Were state police justified in their decision to terminate Proctor, or was his punishment too harsh? Employment law attorney Allie Hilliard explained to us why Proctor's attorneys want to review more than 200 disciplinary files of other Mass State Police troopers, looking for evidence of softer punishments for similar transgressions.
Two people in slightly different roles, but committed a very similar infraction, and say one of them was a female and was not disciplined, and then one was a male and was terminated, that would support or at least provide some evidence from which a fact finder could infer discrimination.
The only thing that gives me some comfort that there's no way that Proctor's getting his job back. Number one, the hearing is going to be public. We're all going to be watching. I don't see how anyone wants that kind of heat on them, right? I mean, you know, even if you want to put yourself in the lion's mouth, that's not a mouth that you would want to be in, right? Not a position you want to be in. There's no attention that's going to be positive that comes out of being an advocate for Michael Proctor. But there's this great irony in the fact that he's like going to claim discrimination, right? Like, is this guy for real? This is really happening? Michael Proctor is going to somehow claim that he's being discriminated against? Is this? You can't be serious.
There's been plenty of other fallout tied to Proctor. The colonel reassigned several detectives who'd worked in the Norfolk DA's office, including Proctor's direct supervisor. Attorneys involved in other murder cases are also trying to get the former trooper's phone records to see if there are messages that could show bias in those investigations. But if the civil service rules in his favor, Proctor would be back on the job with back pay. So we watched today's virtual hearing, but the Civil Service Commission did not allow recording. However, when the appeal begins later this month, it will be in person and open to the public. It's expected to continue in October once Proctor's attorneys have received and reviewed all those disciplinary records they requested from state police.
Oh my God! No, please tell me they're not going to give him his job back. He's claiming he wasn't treated like other troopers. Well, then act like other troopers.
Exactly.
Don't do what you did, which is to take your trooper's hat off and to become a sort of a sideshow. This guy had so many biases going into the case. I mean,
right,
it was embarrassing.
This part here. Here we go. This is what I wanted us to take a look at. So
I need you to be on the same page.
I don't know how many folks are really following this Myles King case closely. But this hearing to me was extraordinarily telling and is another just textbook example of how the Norfolk County, the powers that be, in this case, this Judge Krupp, when you really stop and think about what happened during this hearing, okay, once again, Rosemary Scapiccio is saying, look, this case, these guys have had since 2021. At some point in 2021, Adam Lally stands up as the prosecutor and says, yeah, I think we're pretty good on discovery. I think they pretty much have everything. Then it turns out that before yesterday's hearing, Rosemary Scapiccio had been given 335 new pieces of discovery, okay? Yesterday morning, however, before this hearing, she's handed another stack of discovery. And she tries to get the judge to acknowledge that. And she's trying to point out to the judge the fact that there's all this discovery that they have not gotten. And instead of acknowledging that even, and he certainly, it was very clear, had no intention of wanting to put Adam Lally back, in harm's way. He did not want the circus. It's clear to me that this judge doesn't want the circus. So what does he do? He punishes Rosemary Scapiccio and says, well, I want you to now go through every single item of evidence that you have been given in this case. every single evidence item, every piece of discovery. Tell me what it is and how it warrants an appeal, how it's prejudicial to against, in this case, how it warrants your client having the case thrown out. It's, to me, like, what do you like? I can just imagine how defeating that would feel, because thinking about just functionally what that would entail, having to go through every single, and they just hand her a stack of evidence today, right at the beginning of this. Right. And so again, it's just another example. Now, what I want you to pay attention to, I want you to watch the behavior of the prosecutor's table. Okay. So I want you to just, okay, here it is. So this is, the judge ends up basically admonishing the defense.
They already provided those search warrants to us. They haven't provided the search warrants to us, Judge. In fact, what they provided to us was
No. Just slow down. I want to understand what Exhibit 2 shows.
So Exhibit 2 takes the Commonwealth's opposition.
What's in Column 1?
Column 1 is the description that was received by us.
You're
from
quoting
Commonwealth.
something from what?
Discovery notices, Judge.
Draft affidavit for search warrant 21 SW. I'm sorry. You're quoting what?
We're quoting what the Commonwealth named these documents in their opposition, Judge. That's what the Commonwealth named these documents, to try to convince the court that we already had them. This search warrant stuff down there. The two.
Okay. And you don't have any Bates numbers here, so I can't go and find these things, right?
Right, because the Commonwealth didn't have the Bates stamps in the ones that we did. So if you look down to the second column, we do have Bates stamps. There were some things that were given.
Second column?
I mean, second part of the chart. We were able to provide Bates
Second
stamps.
chart? Or this?
No, just where it says notice 4920.
Like, I just don't get it. Like, I don't understand. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand how it is that nobody seems to be, it really is like the upside down. I mean, at this point, we have this Myles King case. You have the Sandra Birchmore case. The Sandra Birchmore case, which is just disgusting, disgraceful in a way that is just hard to put into words. Like the Explorers program, like think about, I don't even talk about that. That case is just upsetting on another level, right? Like the level of disgusting, like the behavior, like oh yeah, and we're talking about some of the same guys. Oh, how about that? I just don't get it. I don't get how the judge in this case, like, sleeps at night, treating her like this. And I know why, right? He doesn't like the spectacle. He doesn't like the fact that she's walking out of the courtroom steps and, screaming and yelling about her client's rights. Well, isn't that your job as a defense attorney? Aren't you supposed to do anything you can to defend your client? It's just, I don't know. I don't know what is wrong.
Right. So how do I compare what you have to what the Commonwealth has provided me? I need you to be on the same page. I need you to go through every single document that was produced that you base your motion to dismiss on. Every single one. Mm-hmm. You have to address every single one, okay? And you have to make a chart saying...
All right. I don't know who this was. And by the way, I tried to find out what this man's name was, and it was like impossible. I could not find it. So I don't know who this guy is. If somebody knows, please let me know. This man standing here at the prosecutor's table. So this stance from a behavioral perspective is a very interesting one. And it is the reason why I included this video here now. This is a stance of superiority, of arrogance, of confidence, of a sense of like, I'm better than everybody and I have nothing to worry about, right? Like, ha ha ha, like you can't touch me. Like that's what this is right now. And I know you want to say, oh, well, he's just fine, needs a place to put his hands. Well, that's the thing about behavioral analysis, right? We're all human and we all need a place to put our hands. And so it's the place that we choose. It's the choice that we make that is indicative of behavioral analysis, because we don't all make the same choice. We don't all decide to put our hands to not only put our hands behind our back, but to have one hand holding the wrist of the other, the way that this man here does. And when I saw it, it was so exactly the feeling of this hearing, so perfect to the feeling, because the feeling of this hearing is that the defense somehow is getting their ass handed to them, right? Is getting screamed at by the judge, even though her client spent 4 years in jail, and they're still turning over discovery, still. And when I talk basic search warrants, basic stuff. And here's the thing, and I saw Melanie Little talking about this, and I couldn't possibly agree more, right? Like, we all know that it's not accidental. Like, the search warrants, this isn't just like, whoopsie, like, it's not just the way they want you to think it's total incompetence. Adam Lally wants you to believe that he's just indifferent, that he doesn't really care. But it's not indifference. And in exactly the same way that it wasn't indifference in the Karen Reed case, it's like that with probably every case. Like, this group of people are incompetent, and the system has eroded into what you can call corruption. You know, maybe that's a stronger word. I think of corruption. I think, like many of us, I think of payouts. I think of people like in a back room somewhere with wads of cash in an envelope. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a system that has broken down to the point where everybody is just, you know, used to, I guess that's the best way to say it, used to behaving in these egregious ways, used to favoring the prosecutor's office, used to, thinking very little of being messy and sloppy with search warrants, the way we saw in the Brian Walsh case. Think about that case. The Brian Walsh case is another really interesting and exact example of this kind of egregious just like fumble. I mean, that's like the best example, best word I can come up with, a fumble on the part of these cops who, oh yeah, by the way, this guy may have hacked up his wife, hacked her up, okay? And is he going to walk free? Probably not. But certainly, if he did and does, it's because of the incompetence and like just sloppy, disgraceful, arrogant, whatever words you want to throw in there, mess that this entire office, whether it's the homicide detectives or whether it's the prosecutors, the cops, or the lawyers on either side, these people have just gotten into the habit of cutting corners. I think that's probably the best way to say it. Cutting corners. For example, Michael Proctor, Yuri Buchanan, they don't put any of the evidence in the Karen Reed case into the evidence storage area until, what was it, March 15th? So they've got John's clothes, taillight pieces, solo cups, all the evidence that they collect up until March 15th never makes its way into the evidence storage area, right? Which wouldn't matter anyway, because it's Brian Tully, David Chico, and Kakowski that are in charge of the evidence area. But let's pretend that's not true. It's pretty convenient that that stuff never makes it into evidence. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the only reason that the defense ever finds out that there was a second, third, fourth, and fifth search for taillight pieces outside of 34 Fairview, where Proctor, Buchanan, and even the chief of police just happens to be driving past 34 Fairview. Oh, look, there's more taillight. None of that would have ever come out if it wasn't for a mistake that they make in discovery, where they send, as part of that package, a photo of the evidence bag that has taillight pieces, Proctor's name, and a date that is different. I think it was like February 3rd or February 8th. That was different from the CERT team search date, right? So you start thinking, that's not just sloppy. Like that's intentional. This stuff is intentional. There's this effort to control what they think is the outcome that is aligned with justice, right? But in so doing, like another example in the Brian Walsh case, they don't have the go-ahead to take more than just, what was it, like the one, I think it was an iPad and one cell phone, I think. It was definitely 2 devices, and they wind up taking more. And then after the fact, lie about how it was agreed upon with the lawyer, with the defense attorney beforehand that it was okay. And they used the excuse of, oh, we were all working together to try to find his wife. So we didn't think there was anything wrong with taking those devices because we were all working together. Plausible deniability. And it's just, again, another example of these folks. And it's enough, like, when is this going to end? It's really a disgrace. Love Animals 246 sends $9.99 and says, Samantha, you are my spirit animal. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you for sharing your insights and wisdom with us. I can't get enough of the content. Sending giant hugs. And I think it says from OK. P.S. I adore your sister as well. Oh, well, I thank you so much. Thank you. I thank everybody for being here. My God, you guys are all amazing. I say it all the time, you restored my faith in humanity. When you think about how divisive the world has been now for so long, it's just nice for people in a community to come together and be supportive of each other. And so I appreciate you so much more than you know. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. Like we've got to see some measure of change and justice. And here's an interesting question. So we now know that Michael Morrissey's homicide unit has been disbanded. Okay. Tully is allegedly not there anymore. Obviously Buchanan is gone. DeChico's gone. Kukowski's gone. So this unit has been disbanded. Proctor clearly isn't there anymore. So who is there? Like, who's in that office now? Right? It's a really important question. Like, who works there? What the hell is that office like now? My God, it's a little scary to not have any idea, because at least with the devil, you know what you're dealing with. You know that they're corrupt. You know that they're absolute imbecile, moron, whatever, fill in the blank here. You know what you're dealing with that group. Now, without having any idea, it's like, well, that's scary, because how much worse could it be? Well, I think it could be a lot worse, right? But when I saw this video and I saw the way that this prosecutor was standing, you guys, I couldn't. I like lost it, because it's almost like in behavioral analysis, like there's only like a few postures that are kind of universally, like everyone kind of knows that you're a jackass if you stand this way. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but that's kind of the implication subtly. And this is one of them. And so when I saw this guy, in this case, this prosecutor standing like this, with this judge screaming at Rosemary Scapiccio as though she's doing something wrong by trying to just advocate for her client, whose rights have been trampled on, like for the last 4 years. I know the guy is probably guilty of murder. I don't know. That's not the point, though, right? The point is, this is just like business as usual to these folks, to this judge who winds up somehow screaming at the defense attorney and making her look like the fool and making her have to go to great lengths to work her tail off, even though secretly the prosecutor's office is trying to use subtle names, like is naming documents to make the documents sound like they weren't turned over late. What? You gotta be kidding me with this. Oh my God. Anyway, it's so maddening, but this is all happening like at the exact same time, right? And then we're also going to get, and whether it's, again, I know the O'Keefe family, I mean, it appears, right? I don't know if you guys know something I don't. It appears like the O'Keefe family is 100% moving forward with this lawsuit against Karen Reed. Now, I know that, like in the O.J. Simpson case, for example, right, if I remember correctly, he was not guilty in criminal court and then wound up losing a civil case I'm not sure how much longer after the original. I think it was quite a while later, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember. But he lost the civil case and wound up, having to pay the family of the victims, if I remember correctly. So I guess, if you can prove in a civil courtroom that Karen Reed did this, but where is the evidence of that? You couldn't prove it in a criminal courtroom. How do you expect to prove it in a civil courtroom, right? And in doing this, and in insisting, that you're going to bring, quote unquote, Karen Reed to justice, what are you doing? You are turning over, you are allowing and unleashing onto the world all of this discovery that is just going to be more and more incriminating for the Commonwealth. So I don't get it. Obviously, I don't understand how they're thinking here. Oh yeah, that reminds me. So, did anybody else notice there was one detail? I had not heard this anywhere else. If you had heard this, please let me know. I would love to hear it. There was one detail that came from that Kate Peter and Jess Machado interview that I thought was really interesting. So at one point, well, I'll show you because it's right here and I can just pull it right up. This was the one, it was very early on in the interview. It was basically right at the very beginning where Jess is asking Kate Peter to explain why all of a sudden she has come out against Michael Morrissey. Now that was news to me. I had not heard that before and it got my attention. So let's hear what her answer to that is.
That's what these cases are, whether you're the prosecution or the defense, it's work. The people that were doing the work were clearly Adam Lally, Laura McLaughlin, and then later on, Hank Brennan. So although Morrissey has a certain degree of oversight, does he know what's going on with the case every day? No. Does he have his finger on every piece of evidence? Absolutely not. He's a politician, right? And so the decisions that he makes as far as prosecuting this woman, I mean, I don't understand why people would ever complain about that. He had the responsibility to. They had a case that was clearly a triable case. It was tried twice, right? Like they are under an obligation to prosecute that. So the idea that Michael Morrissey was going to capitulate to online pressure and arguably abuses and just drop this case that was clearly a triable case is ludicrous, and I think would reflect poorly on him if he did. You don't want a spineless DA. However, then he lost the case. Okay. His office lost the case. Adam Lally, Hank Brennan, and Laura McLaughlin, their work was not enough. And this case is lost. And then we watch Michael Morrissey go into, I'm going to get reelected. Let's just sweep this under the rug. And one of the first things that he did that I found highly objectionable was immediately cut off the victim witnesses' access to their advocate.
Why speak?
Okay. So that was news to me. Now, I don't know if you guys heard that before, but I had not known that. And to me, finding out through Ms. Peter, who's directly has a personal relationship with Jennifer McCabe and the Albert family, that was really interesting. Because if you think back to the Albert ABC that charade of an interview that they gave together where it was Matt, Jen McCabe, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Chris Albert, which we'll look at in a second, a clip from. I couldn't understand what that was about at the time. Like, what was that about? I didn't understand why you would parade yourself out there following the verdict. It's sort of like now you just brought more attention down on yourself, right? But then when Ms. Peter shared that she knew that they had pulled the witness advocates from the witnesses in the case, i.e. Jennifer McCabe and the Albert family, and that she felt that that was, a great injustice had been done onto them, that sort of sent the antenna up that perhaps that was part of the motivation for this charade interview that this group gives to Matt Gutman and to ABC. And you'll see in just this very quick clip what I mean.
Now, after the verdict,
we took what we thought was the high road. Let the court do its job.
The Alberts deny these allegations and say their children have been targets of threats and harassment by Karen Reed supporters.
Free Karen Reed! Hold on. Have each of you been called murderers? Like actual murderers?
Oh, yeah, on a daily basis.
There have been.
And one thing, I don't know that I mentioned this before. I've done an analysis of this whole interview in its entirety before. One thing I'm not sure I highlighted, or maybe I did, I don't remember. When I look at this now, all I see is everybody in the video looking to Brian Albert before they answer. It's like they get a question, and before they say anything, they look at Brian Albert like, should we answer? Is it okay for me to answer? It's really, I mean, it's every time. It's really interesting. It's all of them. They all look at him and then go to answer. It's really interesting. And then, well, it's almost done.
Threats to your lives. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whether it's phone calls, text messages, emails, crazy Unabomber type letters to people's houses.
Brian believes the targeting of witnesses in this case sets a dangerous precedent.
So you see what I mean here? They're going out and they're doing this little tour about how they no longer have an advocate. Like they're angry at the DA's office. They're angry because they're being mistreated and they don't have protection. The message that they were out there screaming about, that Brian Albert was trying to get across in this interview, although I think that ABC only does a partial job of actually communicating the message clearly that I think they wanted communicated, which was, we're just witnesses and we're being targeted with no protection by the Commonwealth. That was the part that they were looking to try to underline. And at the time, I had no knowledge of the fact that Morrissey had cut off their access to his office.
What's the blueprint?
The blueprint is
so the larger sort of like read between the lines there would be he's trying to separate himself from them, right? He's trying to say, yeah, all right, I'm done with you guys, because let's be honest, not such a popular position, right, for Morrissey to be in. I think I saw, as it stands, he has like a 4% approval rating. I think that's what I saw, 4%. That 4% of everybody asked whether or not they approve of the job he has done. They had said that they do. 4% were going to be looking to elect him again to that position. So, I mean, he couldn't be more unpopular at this point, right? So it's pretty interesting that it appears Morrissey, who had been such an advocate, who literally, there is evidence, who took his cues from Chris and Julie Albert about what to say in that August 2020 ridiculous video. I don't even know what to call that, right? Like announcement. I mean, what do you call that when you have a DA who just sits there and stands and screams into a camera about how unjust it is that people are falsely accusing Colin Albert of a crime?
pick out witnesses, destroy their reputations, attack them, malign them, torture them, torture their kids, torture anybody that ever knew them, make them not testify. And
make them not testify, right? Like, so, I mean, the absurdity, it's just like when you hear these words coming out of Brian Albert's mouth, it's just absurd and hard to take, right? But again, the message that they're trying to put out there, which at the time when I first saw it seemed to be, what I was aware of was that Brian Albert wants to just like double down on the we're all innocent and we're just being so unfairly mistreated by everybody, and we're, just doubling down on that. But now I think there was an another motive, which was to also make it clear that they're not being protected by the district attorney's office.
While doing so, taint the jury pool.
Nicole, you've been very quiet throughout the interview.
Yeah, I'm just very sad. What has happened to all of us? It's just heartbreaking.
So I think that was probably the most honest statement that's ever come out of any of the Alberts' mouths, right? I'm sure she's terribly sad, and I think it probably is really sad. I mean, you know, it's no way to live. I wouldn't. Does anybody want to live the way that these folks and their families are having to live? Of course not. But at this point, right? I mean, it's like, you guys have done, here's what I like to say. So another thing that Ms. Peter in her interview with Jess Machado says a few times, she talks about how she knows murderers because she grew up in poverty in a crummy neighborhood, and I guess in Boston or whatever. And so she knows murderers, and the Alberts and the McCabe's are not murderers. I mean, it's so obvious. I can't even believe I have to say this out loud, but I might as well because we're here. So wait, does that mean that she knows that Karen Reed is like a murderer? She could suss that out, right? Like, nobody's saying that Brian Albert and, you know, Jennifer McCabe and Brian Higgins or even Colin set out that night to be a murderer. Like, nobody believes that, right? These are not sociopaths who go around trying to kill people. That's not what we're talking about. Nobody's ever said that, right? We all understand it was an accident. Whatever happened here, nobody set out to murder John O'Keefe. Nobody. Whether even if it was Karen, which it obviously was not. But even if it was not done on purpose. Right? Like, so what kind of a statement was that? Like, do words, you just don't think at all before words come out? I had a hard time with that one. We obviously, nobody did this on purpose, right? But the fact that, you know, she also talks about how she advocates for them because, you know, she's their buddy, they're friends, they hang out, they're pals. Great. I get it. You know, I had pizza at Chris Albert's pizza shop. I get it. He's a regular guy. It's a regular pizza shop. It's a pretty good pizza. I know you could skin me alive for saying it, but it's true. And I love pizza. These are regular people. We get it. But that's not the point. The point is, and I stand by this and I will stand by it till I'm in the grave. It is the behavior, the actions, the words of the folks inside the house at 34 Fairview Road that have made them the suspects that they are. Nobody else. This isn't a cult. It's not that we've all been brainwashed. It's that these people who had opportunities to testify, to go out there, tell the world their story, tell the truth, and instead you get Colin Albert on the stand swearing up and down that he's never been in a fight. And then within hours, how many videos are released out into the world of Colin Albert fighting? physically fighting, threatening people. Like, he looks like a serial killer sociopath in those videos. Now, I don't think he is. I think he's a drunk moron, punk kid whose, you know, brain is not fully mature yet. You know, we'll see how that shapes out. I don't think he's going to be doing much better, you know, as it stands currently. But so that's what we got from Colin. We got bullshit, perjury, straight up garbage, soup to nuts. That's what we got. We got him presenting himself like a choir boy, like a church boy, right? Like in his little like polo shirt. Like, that's what we got. We got garbage. And you know, like that's what I mean. Okay, so that's just one example. One example. Amy, I will check this out. I will definitely check this out. And thank you for the membership. Oh my God. But I will definitely check this out. I saw it earlier somewhere else too. And there's a lot in Massachusetts right now. We also have 100 people that were released from jail because there was no prosecutors to try the cases. Like Massachusetts, man, what is going on in Massachusetts? Can somebody just what is going on in the state of Massachusetts? Are all states like this? Is this everybody? Is this is this the entire country, or is this just Massachusetts? I mean, I'm sure there's, shades of every color, yes and no in between. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's so maddening. Berkshire Girl. Oh, you're a Berkshire Girl too. Okay, we really appreciate your insight, overview, and passion for Karen Reed, specifically the fact that this is not over yet. Oh my God. Well, that's the thing, right? I continue to hope the true criminals are held responsible. With you, I believe it can happen. And that's the thing. And I appreciate your support so much, Berkshire Girl. There's another statement that Kate Peter makes where she says, well, I don't understand why people are still even talking about this because Karen Reed is free. And again, that just seemed like a really dishonest statement because the only reason, and I'm really glad, by the way, that Karen Reed appreciates this because she didn't say much after the trial, right? Obviously, right? Many of you were there, right? I was there earlier in the week. I wish I could have been there on that very special day at that very special moment when she was able to walk out of the courtroom to the cheers and say what she did into the mics. But what did she say? She says that nobody's done more, to see justice for John O'Keefe than I have. And that's the point, Ms. Peter. The point is that all of us are here because we want to see justice for this fallen police officer. That's the whole point. And the part that is that turns my stomach, the part that, and this is probably the reason why I was so motivated to just even start screaming and yelling about it to begin with. When I think about a Brian Albert, a person like Brian Albert, a person like Jennifer McCabe, who's just a soccer mom, right? Just wants us to believe that she's just a normal soccer mom who takes her kids to CCD and she helps everybody. And, she does this for her 4 daughters. And then you think about the fact that, no, she actually was Googling how long to die in the cold and actually was calling over to her sister's house at 4 a.m. after Karen Reed speaks to her. And that 90% of what she said on the stand was absolutely bullshit. And she's a horrible liar. So it's not even hard to tell. I mean, you don't have to be any type of psychological or behavioral analyst to see that. But if you are, let me tell you, it couldn't be more clear that Jennifer McCabe is just as obviously full of shit as Colin Albert is. Then when you start adding in layers, you add in Chris, you add in Nicole, you add in Caitlin, who just starts lying from the second she opens her mouth. She's lying about the fact that she arrives at the waterfall with Tristan, which isn't true. She's never with Tristan that morning. She was already at the Albert house at 34 Fairview. All these people do is lie. If you are not guilty, wouldn't you want to scream and yell? Wouldn't you want to show people your phone? If there's any way that you could be wrongfully accused of a crime that you didn't commit, especially a murder, but of any crime, wouldn't you go to every length you could to exonerate yourself? Wouldn't you say, here's my phone, here's this computer, this iPad, here's where I was, look at my GPS, talk to everybody that's ever known me, I didn't do this, right? Instead, we have butt dials. We have, destroying phones. We have the district attorney's office allegedly instructing Brian Albert and Brian Higgins to destroy their phones. We have Michael Proctor, the lead investigator on the case, lying directly to the grand jury. We have lying about not knowing any of the Alberts. We have even, Lily White, Carrie Roberts lying to the grand jury, because she's under the, I guess, hypnotic trance that Ms. McCabe puts her in. Like, these people incriminate themselves over and 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 over again. And the best example, like my favorite example, because it's just so egregious and it's so in your face that you don't even see it. Like, I sat and listened to, I don't know how many different hours of testimony about this very thing before I noticed that they were all saying something completely different about the goddamn pictures of the sun and the Marines and where Brian and Brian are, that they just take off for however long, when Brian Albert, the man who we are talking about himself, tells us he's nowhere near the kitchen. He's upstairs in his son's bedroom with Brian Higgins. But then his daughter, Caitlin's like, no, they never left my line of vision the entire night. Okay. All right. These people are lying. There's no question. There's no doubt. There is no getting around it. So you tell me, if they didn't do anything wrong, why is this entire group of people, like, why are they lying like their lives depend on it? Oh, I get it. Because they murdered a police officer. That's the answer, right? Oh my God. It's so upsetting. It's maddening. And then when you hear people like Kate Peter, like, are you kidding with this? Seriously? It's just very frustrating. I get it. Like, look, if you're an O'Keefe family member, as much as I wish that it wasn't this way, because it's a very painful position for them to be in. It really must suck to be Paul O'Keefe or, Peg O'Keefe or anybody in that family, because they, unfortunately, by believing that Karen Read did this, have put themselves on the, I don't want to say on the wrong side of justice, but on the opposition side to all of us who have spent, I don't know how many hours of our lives digging into the details of all of this to try to figure out what really happened. And when you do that, when you actually do dig and dig and dig to try to figure out what happened, it's not a good look for the people in the house who these guys are hanging out with, who they have over their homes. Peg O'Keefe is one of the people that Jennifer McCabe calls when the feds are in her driveway. Oh, and that's another thing, right? You have 10 minutes. You have the feds. You have the Department of Justice in your driveway. And you then say, oh, I'm not me. First, you tell them that you're not who you really are. Then they call you and say, it's a lie to tell me that. So you probably should meet with me. So then she says, oh, okay, I just need a few minutes. And then in a panic, calls 5 people, one of whom is Peg O'Keefe. Right? So not, and then one of whom is the DA's office, her witness advocate at the DA's office, right? So you can imagine that it was quite a significant blow to have Morrissey take that person away from them. That was my point in bringing this up originally. It is a significant blow. How many times throughout the course of the Karen Read cases have you heard Jennifer McCabe or somebody in that camp talk about their witness advocate? And so when I heard Ms. Peter mention that he pulled their witness advocates, I knew that was a very significant detail, because that's all we keep hearing from Jennifer McCabe, to the point where that person was one of the few people she calls when she's got the feds in her driveway. Right? And so to me, that was like a big middle finger from Morrissey to them. And I'm sure there's, there's probably not a warmth anymore between all of these folks, because, yeah, look, their lives are all ruined. Morrissey's life is ruined too. You think he's going to make it to re-election? Like, life is over for that man. Like, he can't go anywhere and be comfortable ever again. And, I'm not saying that that's something to be proud of, but if you just keep making the wrong decision over and over and over and over and over again, eventually, yeah, you're going to pay. You're going to pay for that. And I don't know why the instinct in this community is to double down against all of us. Like somehow, we're the crazy ones, when we're just sort of blowing up the truth, like just saying over and over again what is in plain view for all of us. It's not secrets, right? It's just what's in front of all of us. It's maddening. Oh my God. So Big Dog 5758 sends $5 and says, Sam, what first got you into the case? Well, honestly, my sister is what got me into the case. So we're both like true crime folks. Both always really have been, for different reasons. Like, I'm sort of on the psychological side, and she likes the injustice, like the seeing people that have been wrongfully accused be acquitted, things of that nature. So we meet in the middle. And I'm from Massachusetts. I'm from not Norfolk County, but Berkshire County, or at least I went to high school there. My family's all there now, or mostly there now. And so, when my sister was like, Sam, there's this case. My sister spent many years just outside of, Norfolk County and in Somerville. And so, Boston is a familiar place, I guess. And so she's like, you got to check this case out. So I did. I went home for a weekend. This was right before the first trial. And I did like my deep dive. I just, for whatever reason, took her up on the offer and listened to her. And what got me was the fact that everything that I had learned in that very short 3 days about who Brian Albert was, the fact that he never came out of the house, to me was absolutely an impossibility. It could not have happened. If, based on what I knew about Brian Albert, I'm the elder of all of these siblings, that this is my family home, not just my house that my kids live in, but the house that my parents raised us in, 7 of us in. The fact that he is a bounty hunter, that he had been not just a Boston police officer, but that he'd been on this detective, this Boston's finest, right? That he put himself forward as like a boxer, like on the boxing team for the Boston PD. Everything about Brian Albert exudes control, confidence, arrogance. This is not somebody who is just going to sit idly by when the entire firefighter, like multiple fire trucks, police cars, lights, like all these people are on his very small front lawn. And if you haven't seen or been by 34 Fairview Road yourself, it's hard to appreciate how small this lawn actually is. It looks small on video, but when you're actually in front of the house, it's like if I was laying down, like if 2 of me was laying down with my feet on the curb of the road, and then another me, like foot to head, was spread across, my head would be at the foot of the stairs going in to the front door, right? It is a very small lawn. There's no way, like no world, where a man like Brian Albert does not know what is going on his front lawn on that morning. So I had absolutely no doubt that unless he was truly drugged, like on Thorazine and heroin, there's no way he wasn't waking up. So then, because that was very clear to me, my next question was, well, why not? So that is where I began. That is where my interest, curiosity, desire to want to know more, that is where my position in this case started, was recognizing that there's no way that Brian Albert didn't know what was going on the front lawn that morning. And of course, then this very quickly leads into, oh yeah, there's what looks like, an animal attack on John O'Keefe's arm. And it just so happens, like what a coincidence, that a very large dog, who is a breed that is known for attacking people because of its desire to protect its owners, its pack, its home, just so happens to live in the house. Yeah. So that was the starting position for me. And because that was happening at the exact same time as the trial was starting, it was like one thing after. I got to after that weekend was over, I got to then immediately on Monday start watching the trial, which was really cool. But the way that I started talking about it, I could, you guys all know, if you watch this trial day in and day out, it's sort of like Game 7 of the World Series, or like Game 6 and 7 back to back. Usually there's, usually there's a day in between them. But you're waiting. Like, if you're really a sports fan, that if your team is in, the World Series or in, the playoffs, whatever your team, whatever your sport, it's a really big deal. And, you're kind of anxious. You have like butterflies in your stomach waiting for the games. That's kind of what it felt like during the first Karen Read trial. And as a result, I was emotional and had nowhere to go. And I knew that after going through that once, there was like no way I was going to be able to do it again. And particularly not after I was introduced to Hank Brennan and realized like Hank Brennan was just so unlikable, and imagining hours and hours of Hank Brennan with no place to go with all of that frustration and all those anxieties. That is how I wound up screaming and yelling about it the way I am here with you now. So that's how this all came to be. But it was completely like haphazard, whimsical, without any true intention of any kind other than really just therapy, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to go through it again. And so I'm very, very, very appreciative to this community. My God, because it was my life-saving community through the second trial, which I don't think I would have been able to get through otherwise. So I thank you guys so much. And so in the next few days, I'm going to be very, very busy sorting through, all of my emails. And I'm very fortunate. People send me all kinds of content, all kinds of stuff that they dig up or that they find. So, which I so appreciate and I love. My email's scrolling below. Don't hesitate to send me something if you think that it would be interesting to take a look at. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through this video footage of Brian Higgins from the night in question, and just look through it, try to put some of these videos where there might be other people in the videos in context, because I do think that if it is the case that other cops in particular are in that video, that is an enormous problem for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. One that I don't see how they recover from. If Mike Lank, and one thing in particular that is pretty interesting about that very specific photo that I pointed out with the two-toned sweater, the black on the sleeve or on the shoulder of the sleeve, and then the gray. Well, it just so happens that if you watch the dash cam footage, I believe it's Mike Lank who says, yep, he actually uses the term two-toned to describe what he is wearing in the video. So, and of course, if anybody was going to be there helping Kevin Albert, who would it have to have been? It would have been the other homicide detective at Canton PD, who was Mike Lank. That is there are two homicide detectives at that time. This is at that time, not now, at that time, who were working at the Canton Police Department. I believe it was Kevin Albert and Mike Lank. Those were the two guys that were actually homicide detectives, not just cops. So, and remember, we're talking about a man who is now a lieutenant. Mike Lank is now a lieutenant, although I think he's no longer detective. I think he's now just a regular cop, I guess, and not working as a detective. So, pretty interesting, because, if I had to pick who I think would probably be the person. Oh, and there's more. So that's what you're going to be seeing coming from me probably in the days soon hereafter. You're going to start to see all of me trying to put these pieces together to highlight what might be evidence that, these Canton cops were actually aware of Brian Higgins being at the Canton Police Department in some kind of a crisis on that morning, right? Would it surprise you? Would it surprise you? And, is it possible that these same people who were putting the blurs over Karen Reed's taillight, would it surprise you if they were putting blurs over the video of Brian Higgins at the Canton Police Department, outside of the Canton Police Department? No, not at all. What surprises me is that none of us caught it. And the only way I can explain that is it's boring. It's boring. I mean, I sat and I tried to watch all 10 minutes of, you know, the videos of him allegedly moving the cars outside, but it was boring and all I'm seeing is snow. I can barely see or make out where even he is in that video. So of course I'm going to give up and move on because I can't even make out where he's at, right? So I didn't give it much time. And my guess is that's probably how most of us handled it. But who I would love to talk to about this would be like the guys from Microdots, because, you know, those who are actually capable of video editing at a high level. I have like the software and the programs to do it, but I don't know how to do it. I would be purely, you know, playing basically. But somebody who has a high level of ability with these things would be extraordinarily helpful in this effort. So maybe I will try to reach out to those guys and just say, hey, maybe you want to take a look at this. I don't know. All right, everybody. I so appreciate you all. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your night. Denise, thank you so much for our pseudo first day of operating as a moderator. By next week, hopefully we'll have the mod situation all figured out, all kind of signed, sealed, delivered. And, you know, we'll see. Be on the lookout because I'm going to be tightening all this up and packaging it together, and we'll see what comes of it. And, you know, who knows? Maybe there are some secret, very important details in some of these videos that we need to be, you know, unpacking as soon as possible. So lots to come in the days to come. My God, there's going to be an endless amount, a trove of information coming at us in the days and weeks to come. And so, you know, we're all going to be here for it. And as Berkshire Girl points out, I certainly won't shut up until I can't live with myself knowing that the people who murdered this man are still not only walking around and living their lives as per usual, but actually, you know, out there screaming and yelling and claiming that we're just witnesses and we're just like these innocent soccer moms. Like, I just can't. I can't. So that is that. Everybody enjoy the rest of your night. And I will be back here on Wednesday and I will see all of you again so soon. I thank you more than you'll ever know for your time, your effort, your support, your energy. And hopefully I'll see you back here next Wednesday. Bye, everybody.